This is not just an academic or cultural critique, this is personal. I was raised in a fundamentalist Baptist household under the shadow of an authoritarian, misogynistic father. The church I grew up in was not just a building, it was a system that shaped every part of my identity, instilled fear, and justified abuse. What I'm sharing in this video comes from lived experience, deep emotional work, and years of painful unraveling. Normally, I use a lot of sarcasm and satire to talk about religion, but not today. This topic is too close to home. It deserves honesty, gravity, and compassion for the many people, like myself, who are still trying to heal. So today we're getting serious. We're going to dissect what it means to deconvert from fundamentalist Baptist Christianity, and why, for so many of us, it's not just a crisis of faith, it's a survival story. Deconversion is more than disbelief. It's a psychological and identity shift. It's the unraveling of core beliefs, the questioning of what is good, what is true, and what is worthy of love. For those raised in fundamentalist or Southern Baptist traditions, this process is often a collision between deeply ingrained dogma and the undeniable call of personal growth. Baptist churches often pride themselves on having unshakable truth, but that very rigidity becomes their greatest weakness. The more authoritarian and closed off a system is, the more fragile it becomes in the face of new information or real-world contradictions. The demand for unquestioning loyalty often backfires when sincere questions arise and are met with punishment. An independent fundamentalist Baptist, otherwise known as IFB, and conservative Southern Baptist circles, authority is everything. Deviating from doctrine isn't treated as growth, it's rebellion. From a young age, individuals are conditioned to obey parents, pastors, and God. Questioning is punished, not nurtured. This suppression of autonomy is not discipline. It's psychological abuse masked as faith. Many former Baptists describe a house of cards faith. Every belief is presented as equally important and literally true. But once one card, say evolution or LGBTQ plus rights, falls, the rest often collapse. There's no room for nuance. The rigid structure demands all or nothing. For many, that choice becomes impossibly painful and impossibly clear. Fundamentalist Baptist settings often instill fear from the earliest memories. Fear of hell, fear of sin, fear of thinking for yourself. When people begin to break away, they face not only spiritual anxiety, but also the loss of family, community, and identity. Deconversion, then, isn't just a change of belief. It's an act of personal survival. Purity culture, especially for young girls, is a particularly cruel form of control. Sexual desire is condemned. Women are told to be submissive, silent, and shame-filled. My own experience with misogynistic parents wasn't just family dysfunction. It was theology lived out, and it leaves deep, lifelong scars. The family was not just following tradition, they were following doctrine. Parents become enforcers of divine will, often unknowingly. In homes like mine, questioning dad meant questioning God. This created a web of loyalty, fear, and silence that made deconversion feel like betrayal, not just to faith, but to family. Let's break it down. The characteristics of high-control Baptist environments, authoritarianism, biblical literalism, suppression of doubt, purity culture, all correlate with psychological harm. And I'm going to mention some of the harms done. So the core feature of the Baptist religion, especially that of fundamentalist Baptist, is in Southern Baptist too. So the core feature of the religion is an authoritarian structure, and its psychological impact on an individual is identity suppression and emotional fragility. Another core feature of this fundamental Baptist religion, and also that of Southern Baptists, the more strict Baptists. So another core feature of this belief system is biblical literalism. And its psychological impact on an individual is cognitive dissonance and fear of doubt. Another core feature of this Baptist religion is purity culture and gender roles. And its psychological impact on the individual causes shame, low self-worth, and trauma. Oh, yeah, it does. And it also promotes the us versus them theology. Oh, yeah. And its psychological impact on the individual includes social isolation and loss of community. For many of us, leaving the Baptist church wasn't about rejecting truth. It was about reclaiming it. And we'll explore the emotional aftermath of that rupture in part 2, as we take a deeper look at religious trauma. In part 1, we explored why so many Baptists raised to believe unshakable truths ultimately walk away. Today we go deeper into the wounds left behind. Religious trauma syndrome isn't an abstract theory, it is lived reality. If you still flinch at church bells or wake up fearing hell, this episode is for you. Coined by psychologist Dr. Marlene Winnell, religious trauma syndrome names the psychological fallout from authoritarian fear-based faith systems. Symptoms mirror complex PTSD, chronic anxiety, panic attacks, nightmares, depression, identity loss, and pervasive shame. Oh yeah, let me tell you, yes. That indeed happens. In fundamentalist Baptist households, worth equals obedience. Doubt becomes sin. Curiosity becomes rebellion. Add threats of eternal punishment and shame-based morality, the trauma takes deep root, often beginning in childhood. For women, trauma is magnified by purity culture's message. Your value is submission and sexual silence. Identity fractures when basic human desires are labeled sinful. Psychologists call it epistemic harm. Being taught your own mind is untrustworthy. Decades of lean on unto your own understanding leave former believers doubting every intuition, even after faith is gone. Oh yeah, that's my experience, all right. Yeah, I can tell you that's true. You may no longer believe, yet a late-night thought can still spark terror. What if I'm wrong? This last ghost is a conditioned somatic response, more like a PTSD flashback than a theological crisis. There are 4 stages to the healing process from all of this. Stage 1 is intellectual deconversion. Key experiences in this stage is that doubts surface, theology is deemed false. And the healing focus in this is critical inquiry and information. And the typical span that you deal with this is weeks to even years. And the second stage, the next stage, is emotional backlash. And your key experiences in this pertaining to do with emotional backlash is feeling fear, guilt, grief, and panic. Now, your focus in the healing process to do with this emotional backlash is you need to be trauma-informed and with a safe community. And the typical span for this emotional backlash stage is months to even years that you deal with this part. The third one is identity reconstruction. And your key experiences in this is to develop a new worldview, values, and social circles. And your healing focus in this should be self-discovery and boundary work. You need to learn to set your own boundaries. And your typical span in the identity reconstruction phase is typically between 5 to 10 years. And I'm still trying to form some of my identity. I've got most of it there, but I'm still trying. Somatic unlearning. I'm still working on this. The body stops flinching at triggers, key experiences. I haven't hit that stage yet. I'm still having emotional triggers, and key experiences with the somatic unlearning. You're trying to deconstruct. You're trying to unlearn something you've been taught to believe in, and whatever, and you're trying to unlearn it and come to reality, but your body is still reacting. So in this stage, somatic unlearning, after you've learned these new things, you've learned to process it, then your body stops flinching at triggers, at these emotional triggers and whatever. And you develop your healing focus in this stage is grounding and body-based practices. And the typical span during this time it takes to get to this stage is often a decade or more. And timelines can vary depending on the person, so healing isn't linear. High control faith gave us a pre-written identity. Deconversion is the brave act of authorship, moving from one heteronomy to autonomy. Leaving sin-centric thinking opens space for internally derived ethics. Secular humanism, existentialism, religious naturalism all invite critical thinking and empathy untethered from fear. Healing is multifaceted. Trauma-informed therapy validates religious trauma syndrome and addresses sexual shame and spiritual bypass. Community, such as online forums, support groups, podcasts, breaks isolation and replaces toxic scripts. Practical tools such as grounding breaths, narrative journaling, self-compassion, and teaching the body that it is safe. So let me give some resource snapshots from everything that I've talked about. So therapy, such as religious trauma-informed clinicians, and the benefits of this is specialized guidance, and as far as how to access the therapy, the Religious Trauma Institute.org is good. Recovering from Religion, now that's a really good one. I haven't went to these places, but I really should. But those are two really good ones. And you can also go to your online community, such as an ex-Christian and atheist community, or a community that specifically deals with deconversion. You can join up with these groups and for support. So the benefit of joining up with these online community is there are shared narratives and validation. So these groups is really important in the healing process. So, as far as how to access these communities, there are several on them on all sorts of networks. You got YouTube, uh, YouTube, Facebook, Reddit. I mean, you name it. There's several places you can go to try to find these communities. And there's support groups such as the Reclamation Collective, which you can go to for structured peer support. And as far as how to access this, there's something called reclamationcollective.com. I've never been there, but that's one of the... I never visited that source, but there's that. And as far as... and you can also do educational podcasts, which I am doing right now. This is my therapy, is to do this and to try to help others. So it's an educational podcast. It's also designed as a support system. And so, say education and podcast and that. One of them, recovering from religion, I've mentioned. I'm in the process of trying to contact somebody to do from there to do a online interview with me on this podcast. So currently, I'm trying to get hold of them because it's really important that you know where this, that you have this kind of help. So, say education and podcasts. They have their own website and podcasts and stuff. So they're good. And so from it, you can receive expert interviews and normalization. I mean, they can make you feel like, okay, this is normal. What you're going through is normal. So that is a very good website to go to. It's called recoveringfromreligion.org. And that's a good place to go to, although I've never sought counseling for this religious trauma thing. It's a good site to go to. They're professionals. There are also crisis hotlines, such as the Trevor Project. Once again, I've never gone for any help for any of this stuff. I rely on online communities. So the Trevor Project, crisis hotlines such as the Trevor Project, they can offer 24/7 confidential help. And so the Trevor Project, there's a phone number. It's 1-866-488-7386, and it's here in the United States. So let's go on to the next section. Religious trauma does not have to have the final word. Recovery is possible, identity can be resurrected, and community can thrive in new spaces of honesty and care. In Part 3, we turn outward, examining the spectrum of Baptist denominations, their diverging doctrines, and especially how they treat LGBTQ plus individuals. Understanding this diversity helps us see why some environments amplify trauma while others begin to confront it. In parts 1 and 2, we examined why so many Baptists leave the faith and the trauma they carry. To understand that exodus fully, we need to zoom out. How did Baptist traditions arrive at such divergent positions, and why do younger generations increasingly find them untenable? That's our focus in part 3. The Baptist story begins in 17th century Europe with John Smith championing believers' baptism and separation of church and state. Those ideas took hold in colonial America, fueling waves of revival during the First and Second Great Awakenings. In 1845, Baptists split over slavery. Southern churches formed the Southern Baptist Convention, defending slave-holding missionaries. That legacy still shapes the Southern Baptist Convention, otherwise commonly known as the SBC, now the largest and one of the most conservative Protestant bodies in the United States. The SBC, as I mentioned, the Southern Baptist Convention, they are conservative, and they are known for their beliefs of Bible inerrancy, complementarianism, disfellowships of LGBTQ affirming churches. The American Baptist churches, USA, their theological tilt, they lean to moderate progressive. And their notable traits, they're known for having a local church autonomy, and some of them with LGBTQ inclusion. Now, there's also the National Baptist Convention, and they are historically black, and their notable traits is that they have a social justice focus, but they vary on their LGBTQ stances. What stance they take on it kind of varies in these National Baptist Conventions. Another one is the Independent Fundamental Baptist, otherwise commonly known as IFB. They are ultra-fundamentalists, and they use the King James Version Bible only. And they have strict gender codes and are often isolationists. So that sounds a lot like the fundamental Baptist setting that I was under. So let's go on to the next section. Official SBC doctrine labels homosexual behavior as sinful. Some congregations welcoming LGBTQ+ members are expelled. At the extreme, new IFB pastors openly call for violence. Outcomes are measurable: higher depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation among queer youth raised in these settings, and conversion therapy programs, still promoted by some Baptist networks, amplify that risk. Surveys show a stark generational divide. Nearly 60% of Americans under the age of 30 who leave religion cite anti-LGBTQ teachings as a primary reason. Oh, yeah. Broader culture moves toward inclusivity, but many Baptist pulpits do not. That gap, call it a moral lag, propels deconversion, especially among those whose friends, family, or self-identities are LGBTQ+. Some Baptist congregations are re-examining doctrine, but many double down. For countless former believers, staying would mean betraying loved ones or themselves. Deconversion, then, is not rebellion for its own sake. It's a moral necessity when faith and conscience diverge. We've traced the historical fault lines and explored the deep moral conflicts driving deconversion. But theology and doctrine aren't the only problems. In Part 4, we'll dig into the money trail, how Baptist institutions are structured financially, how power is consolidated, and how systemic misconduct has been enabled and concealed. From tithes to scandals, we'll examine the organizational underbelly that often goes unchallenged, but plays a major role in why people walk away for good. You've heard the doctrines and felt the wounds. Now let's follow the money. Behind many Baptist pulpits lies a billion-dollar machine, one that preaches righteousness while too often protecting power and profit. Today we expose how financial structures and institutional cover-ups accelerate the exodus from the pews. The Southern Baptist Convention alone reports $10 billion in annual receipts. Properties, investment, portfolios, endowments, an empire built on tithes and trust. Yet headlines tell another story. Pastors siphoning nearly $1 million, treasurers doctoring books, boards quietly seizing local church assets. When watchdogs ask for transparency, governing committees restructure to keep decisions behind closed doors. Money isn't the only currency of corruption. Investigations reveal hundreds of SBC leaders credibly accused of sexual abuse. Yet survivors say internal reports were buried, NDAs signed, payouts made in secret. A faith that demands purity while hiding predation destroys its own moral authority. For many ex-Baptists, leaving wasn't about disagreeing with God. It was about refusing to bankroll a system that protects abusers and punishes truth-tellers. The main reasons for leaving the Baptist faith are that they stopped believing, there's corruption, and of course, LGBTQ plus condemnation. Behind every statistic is a story. Families shattered when whistleblowers were shunned. Survivors forced to sign silence agreements. Faithful givers learning their tithes funded legal defenses instead of community care. Christians still sitting comfortably in these pews, hear this. Every offering dropped into a basket without demanding full transparency sustains a system that has betrayed the vulnerable. Your silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. If the Jesus you follow cared for the least of these, then shielding abusers and hoarding wealth in his name is blasphemy in action. You have a choice. Confront your leaders, open the books, side with survivors, or admit the gospel you profess stops where your comfort begins. To practicing Baptists, demand independent audits, survivor-led reforms, and zero-tolerance policies, or withhold your attendance and your wallet. To former believers and allies, support organizations investigating church corruption, donate to survivor advocacy funds, and amplify these stories. To everyone watching, share this series, comment with your experience, and subscribe so the algorithms keep this conversation alive. Until churches value people over property and truth over reputation, the exodus will continue, and it should.